right. I think we're all good now. I think everybody's here. So are you there?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Alrighty, sharing my screen. Did you already give me permission to share my screen?
Yeah, you should be able to.
Alrighty, here goes.
All right. Sorry,
So
you're gonna have to start all over again.
actually, Matt Trigoni was recording the first half, so we'll just send that
Okay.
link, so you don't have to hear me ramble all over again.
Okay, no problem. And I'll manage the people, or
Okay.
Conrad will manage the people trying to come in.
All right, sounds good.
All right, let's get this going.
Going full screen. All right. So just to fill in, so it's not a complete gap. I was just talking about my performance up to this point and my goals for the road ahead. And again, talking about these things because I was just in your shoes. Started in July and finished in January, or finished in December. All right, so yes, my shift is towards pulling in listings, because you're making money in your sleep when you have listings instead of having to be constantly driving around town, et cetera, with buyers, which it's still fun to do that from time to time. That's still primarily what I'm doing. But once you get towards being a listing agent, it's a lot less of burning your gas and a lot of on the road time. Another goal of mine is to expand in my agent attraction. So for those of you that have not seen a video on the agent attraction piece, that's or the revenue share piece that's offered by EXP, I strongly recommend watching one of those videos. One of the popular ones is Brent Gove, and that's last name is Gove. So if you just search on YouTube, Brent Gove EXP, you'll hear his little spiel and how it all works. And it's a great way to set yourself up for retirement, especially if you haven't retired or not retiring from the military and you want to have like a steady income and you don't want to have to be on the road until you're 70, just showing around buyers. We have someone else that's trying to come into the meeting. And then, yeah, so last goal of mine is to establish a system for everything. So if you want to grow and having a team, you need to have clear instructions for like how to do everything. And so I'm going to start making Loom videos for myself and for future members of our team. So everything from how to go on the Showing Time app and set up showings to how to set up an auto email for a buyer and all that stuff. So, and Loom, if you're not familiar with that, you might see this little logo in the bottom. It'll record your screen and records your voice, et cetera, so that as you're talking through what you're doing on your computer, you can give instruction to whoever you're explaining that stuff to. All right. And the reason you want to do that is, yes, when you hire that first person onto your team, it's not a big deal. You're explaining to one person. But as that starts to multiply and you have 2, 3, 4 people coming onto your team, all that time that you're pouring into teaching that one person, if you would have just done a Loom 10 minutes a day over the course of a year, all that training, you can just send them the video. They can watch it on their own time. They can watch it multiple times in case something's not quite making sense to them, and they can see it on the screen themselves. And it'll end up saving you a lot of time and frustration in the long term. All right, and then some things that I'm keeping in mind going into this next year in the business. So there is market shift. In case you haven't heard, the news is pumping out fear about the changing rates and how nobody's going to buy or sell for the rest of their lives, et cetera. But the news is going to continue to do that as they always have done. But you just need to keep in mind that there is a shift coming, and it's just a matter of adapting to that shift. A book I highly recommend reading is Shift by Gary Keller, same author of Millionaire Real Estate Agent. And yeah, it just provides some great advice for how to adapt to those shifts. And then also keeping in mind that there's seasonal and cyclical shifts. So cyclical, when I say that, I mean like what we're going through right now, going from being a seller's market where you have to suck up to the seller in order to get an offer accepted to be in a buyer's market where it's the other way around. There's also seasonal shifts. So usually around November, December, people are shifting their focus towards just enjoying the holidays and less so toward buying or selling their home. And then you don't see the results of that in your paycheck, at least until the February, March timeframe. And my wife and I, we saw that this first year, because in March, we had a really good January and February, and then March, we didn't close anything. And for one, it was because we were focusing too much on the escrows that we had, the deals that were already closing. And but also it was because of the seasonal shift where there's just not as many buyers during that time frame. And then another thing, the odds of success is realtor. You may have heard of the Pareto principle, 80-20, and same thing applies with real estate. They say 80% of agents don't make it past their first 2 or 3 years in the business. But something I use for encouragement is this quote right here from Chesty Puller: "We're surrounded." That simplifies things. So yeah, everything, the news, the odds, et cetera, are saying it's highly unlikely for you to be part of the 20% that's successful. But if you just think about this, and then this burn the ships concept of just going 100% and not settling for anything but success in this new profession, then you'll make it. A lot of people say like, "Oh, I'm gonna get out of the military." It's understandable depending on the situation. Like if you have kids and a wife to provide for, then yeah, maybe you do need a part-time gig to pay the bills. But if you burn the ships, if you say like, this is real estate is my number one gig and I'm going to be successful in this, then you'll make it happen, instead of finding all these other side things to spend your time on, because all that time spent towards those side gigs, those part-time jobs, going to college, et cetera, takes away from the time you should be pouring into your real estate business. Any questions so far? Nope. All right. All right. So everyone in this meeting is probably in one of these two trains of thought. So I'm studying for my real estate license, but I also want to start doing some on-the-job training because I'm tired of just reading the books and doing practice tests, et cetera. Or I just got my license and I don't know where to get prospects. So regardless of where you're at, this information will be useful to you and beneficial to your long-term success. All right. So first, I want to say it's important to keep in mind to practice, practice, practice. I didn't really practice scripts while I was in the program, and I wish I had, but I'm making up for it now. It's important to have those skills and like have a default things that you're going to say when someone answers the phone, so you're not just like, "Oh, hi, I'm a realtor. I want to sell your house." You want it to be more natural. "Hey, how's it going? My name is such and such. How's your day going? Are you the owner of this property? Oh, great. How long have you lived there?" And there's tons of scripts out there. All you got to do is Google realtor scripts. There's scripts on Go Group University that you can look up. But there's tons of free scripts that are out there, and it's just a matter of practicing them. And it's not just memorizing them, like actually using them. Get with your accountability partner, get with your friend, that your roommate, whatever your living situation is, and practice so that it becomes just natural, just how you speak when you're talking to people on the phone. All right, so something that I've learned is a key to have is to have a systematic approach to how you're doing it, instead of just like, all right, I'm just gonna pick up my phone and start dialing. That's getting started. That's maybe a good technique just to get over the fear of calling somebody randomly. But you want to have a systematic approach so you can track your progress and then and do the math that we'll talk about later on. So in order to have a systematic approach, you'll want to develop a client relationship manager, or CRM. So for the people that are not licensed, this could be as simple as an Excel spreadsheet or go on Google Sheets. Both are free services, or technically Google Sheets. I don't think you have Excel for free unless you have a Windows computer. But you just pull up that spreadsheet, punch in the title for the column, the name, email, phone number, and notes. And if you have a CRM already, so KB Core is what's provided by EXP to licensed agents, or you might have Follow Up Boss, like my team uses. But all those CRMs have this type of information for you to punch in. So now you have your spreadsheet. This shouldn't take you more than 20 or 30 minutes just making this spreadsheet to start tracking your information. So you have your CRM. Now what? So who am I going to talk to? Do I just randomly start calling people? Do I look up people in the phone book and start reaching out to them? But so here's my recommendation. So for everyone, licensed or unlicensed, upload your iPhone contacts. So if you just Google how to upload iPhone contacts, you'll find the instructions on how to do that. Same thing goes for Samsung or whatever type of phone you're using. And then whatever file type it is, you can convert it to Excel or whatever to make it easier to read. But you'll have that data laid out in front of you: name, address, email, etc., and phone number. And then you'll have that system where you can just start plugging in your notes. All right, called Bill on this date. We talked about X, Y, and Z. And then another way to get contacts, if you're licensed, is physical contact information. So if you see someone with a phone number in their yard saying that they're selling their house, try calling that person and practicing and using your FSBO scripts on and try to pull them in as a seller client. And then you can also use something I learned recently was Zillow. I haven't been on Zillow forever just because I stick to the actual MLS, the multiple listing service. So for those of you that don't know what FSBO is, it's for sale by owner. So someone that's selling their home on their own. And so you can go on Zillow and look up FSBO properties, and it's going to have their phone number for that person. And I guess there's two different buttons. If you click on talk to an agent, you're going to get sent to some random agent that's buying your information. But if you just look up the person's phone number, you can call that person and have that conversation with them. Another option is to buy prospect information. I recently purchased some prospect information from this company, Pioneer Data Solutions, and it's basically a credit bureau, and they have information on people if there's a difference in the address that they own and the address that they live or that they get mailed to. They're kind of identified as vacant owners, and so maybe they have a house that they were renting out and are no longer renting it and might be looking to sell it, or if they're just they just have an extra house that's just sitting there that they might be interested in selling. And then the next one that I'm going to be exploring is RedX. Out here in Hawaii, it's not that beneficial when it comes to for sale by owner and expired because there's not a whole lot of those. I talked to the guy a couple of days ago, and there's only 4 for sale by owner properties on the island. Yeah, that's a really useful, really powerful tool for pretty much anywhere else in the States. And have this geo leads feature where basically you can just look on the map near you, click on an area, and you can get the information for contacting people in your nearby area. All right, and then a thing that I learned that's beneficial is tracking your progress. So just as simple as on a notepad, just making tick marks of each call you make, each answer you get, and then each conversation you have. And that's, I'll explain later why that's beneficial, but ultimately when you're just sitting there dialing over and over again, it can get kind of dry and feel like, oh my gosh, this is the worst thing in the world. But over time, you'll see that progress and you'll see your numbers getting better. As I'll talk about in a second here, it took me 2.5 hours to make 10 phone calls the first day that I started calling. But you'll see that progress over time. And just the other day, I was averaging 50 phone calls in 2 hours. So I'm getting better.
Sorry to interrupt. Did you have a dialer when you did that?
No, I didn't.
Okay. So that was probably a big part of it.
Yeah, a dialer would be huge. I haven't quite made the jump to get one of those yet, but I do plan to in the very near future. And
those help tremendously because they can dial 3 lines at once. Yeah, and not everybody picks up, right? So it's whoever picks up first is the one that you take. So that helps with RedX. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of the time is burnt just listening to the dial tone, just ring, ring. And instead, if you have 3 of those going at the same time. And I guess the other 2 that don't answer, you can set it up where you can drop them a voicemail or it just hangs up. But another helpful thing is critiquing yourself. So there's this app that I use. It's called Tape a Call. I won't get into legalities of recording phone calls, et cetera, but it's helpful. Just like watching tapes for whatever sport you might have played, and critiquing yourself on what you could have done in a certain situation to score a point or whatever, you can listen to your calls and think to yourself like, oh, during that blank space where I wasn't saying anything, I should have asked a question. Or when they mentioned that their kids moved out, I could have been like, oh, you guys are looking to downsize then, or ask them some kind of question. But yeah, critiquing yourself. And another way you can do that is with your accountability partner. So just set up a Zoom, have a list ready to call people, and then just go back and forth taking turns, laugh at each other when you get an angry person that answers the phone or when you make mistakes, and just make it fun, because that'll make you want to keep going back to doing it. So a pro tip that I got from one of my mentors is having an alter ego. So what he does is he puts on this golf glove, and when he puts that on, it kind of like, it's like putting on your sports uniform, like you're ready to do work. Or if you're Sylvester Stallone in the movie Over the Top, you can put your hat on backwards, means you're ready to do business. And then some other techniques, smiling. So if you haven't read the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, highly recommend reading that. One of the topics it talks about in there is the how it changes your tone when you smile. And so when you smile, you can hear the difference in someone's voice when they're smiling. And you'll notice that when you talk, when like cold callers call you for selling whatever they're selling, a lot of times they're smiling when they're talking, so it sounds like a cheery person. You actually want to talk to them instead of somebody that's just dry and angry and bored. And then lastly, ask questions. So when you're making these phone calls, it's not your opportunity to show off how well you memorize the script. It's your opportunity to ask questions, to find out that person's pain point on why they should buy or sell a house, and then make an appointment to address that in detail. And so you want to put on your detective hat and find out what that pain point is for them, especially if you're calling people like I am the absentees. So some people just have their vacation home here in Hawaii, but if through that conversation, you might be able to find a reason why they might want to sell. For example, one of the leads that I'm working with that I acquired from cold calling was she was an absentee. So she has this house that's not her primary residence, and her kids are actually living there, but she actually wants to get a bigger house. So that could be, a double win there. Help her sell that house and help her buy a bigger house here in Hawaii. But yeah, you just got to find that pain point, and that's just through having that conversation, asking questions, and just digging deeper. All right. So with your system set up in the CRM and with people to call, now it's time to start dialing, and do it every day. You want to set aside at least 2 to 3 hours per day, every day of the work week, and make it a habit to the point where you start feeling weird if you don't do it. And I'm finally getting to that point. At first, it was just like, I'd rather do anything else than pick up my phone and start calling people and get scolded that I have the wrong number or whatever. But now it's like, I need to do that today. I need to get that done so that I feel okay and feel like I won the day. For me, like gym time is like that. Like if I don't go to the gym, when I go to bed at night, I'm laying there like, oh man, I can't fall asleep. And the reason why is like, I didn't go to the gym today. But you can eventually get to the point where calling is like that for you. And then another helpful technique is Zooming with a partner and making those calls. So you're keeping each other accountable, and then also just making it fun. If you're thinking this right here, it's awkward, I don't know what to say, here's a technique to help with that, especially if you're one of the unlicensed people calling people in your phone book, in your contact phone book on your phone. You can use this forward technique, talk about family, occupation, recreation, and dreams. So, hey, Bill, how's it going? How's the family doing? Oh, good. My kids are getting big. They're starting middle school. Oh, that's great. What are you doing for work these days? Oh, I got a GS job working cybersecurity. Oh, that's great. How about you? Oh, I just transitioned out of the Marine Corps. I'm getting into real estate. Oh, that's awesome. What area are you serving? Whatever. Oh, Hawaii. Oh, that's great. So what are you doing for fun these days? Oh, yeah, I'm going boating, come lake here in Arizona, whatever. Oh yeah, that's awesome. I make time every week to go to the beach. And so what are your long-term goals? Like, are you going to stay with that GS job until retirement, or are you looking to pick up another job after that. Oh yeah, I'll probably just stay with this gig until retirement. Oh, how about yourself? And so you just have that conversation. And as you can see, I was pointing to each word as I went along. You're just shuffling through those letters instead of sitting there. Hey, how's it going? Hey, I haven't talked to you in 7 years. Why are you calling me? You can just shuffle through those items to have a steady conversation. And you might be saying to yourself, why would I call my best friend from elementary school who I haven't talked to in 15 years? And they're going to clearly know that I'm just calling them to tell them that I'm a realtor now. If that is how that conversation turns out, who cares? Like, you're probably never going to talk to them again anyways, and you at least practice your phone calling skills with them. But on the good side, if it turns out into a good conversation, that person knows that you're in the business of real estate now, and next time they're talking to somebody about buying or selling a home, and they're like, oh yeah, hey, my realtor friend Zoar, he's in Hawaii, and he'd be happy to talk to you and answer any questions you have, regardless of where you're going to buy or sell. All right, so my first month lessons learned from calling. So first one, like I said, took me 2.5 hours to make 10 calls. And a big reason for that, one, yes, the dial tone takes up a lot of that, but that first day was primarily due to doing research. So I was just doing everything I could to avoid actually making phone calls. And so I was going on the multiple listing service, like looking at the person's name, looking at the property, how many bedrooms, how many square foot, when was the last time it was sold, what's the tax value, all this information that doesn't matter. It was just me wasting time and procrastinating and doing research so that when I got on the phone with them, I would have stuff in my mind that I could ask them about or whatever. But the point of the conversation, again, is to set the appointment. You're not trying to convince them that you know everything about their house, you know exactly what it's worth, et cetera. You're just trying to make that appointment for when you're going to talk about listing their home or helping them buy a home. So don't do the research, just call and just put on that detective hat and start asking questions. Yeah, find ways to dial faster. So like Tasha said, a dialer will help out a lot with that. One of the things that I discovered just for getting started for jerry rigging a way to dial faster, you can put your CRM on your phone, so you can have that spreadsheet on there, or maybe message yourself with the names and phone numbers for the people that you're going to call that day. That way you can just tap on the phone number, don't have to worry about dialing each individual number or misdialing, putting the wrong number, and then you think it's a bad number when really you just fat fingered it. You can also iMessage yourself. So if you have your iPhone connected to your Mac or whatever, you can text message through your computer to your phone. So as you make each phone call, type in the notes on your spreadsheet on your computer, and then you're making the phone call. One quick side note, this is kind of like my glove that I put on when I put on my headset, if like I'm ready to do business. It's just an AfterShokz headset with a little boom mic. It has like a noise canceling and stuff, so your voice is clear. But it makes it a lot easier having this on your head instead of holding the phone to your ear. Your face starts to sweat, gets the phone greasy, whatever. But yeah, this is my little tool that I use. Another lesson learned, local area code. So all of us here are military. So for the first couple of weeks, I was calling from my Arizona area code 520. And I get a lot of spam calls from that area code because I'm from there, because my phone is from there. But I'm sure you guys get spam calls from all kinds of random phone numbers. But if you're trying to target people in your nearby area, you're going to want an area code from that area. So I finally got an 808 phone number. And the very first day of making calls with that 808 phone number, I had much better results with getting people to actually answer the phone. Lastly, what I've learned is, yes, it's uncomfortable, but it does get easier with repetition. The more you do it, the easier it's going to get. The more you're going to learn, the better you're going to get at using your scripts, etc. All right. And again, keep it simple. Your primary objective on those phone calls is to set an appointment. It's not to do a property evaluation right there on the spot. It's not to email them right there, the listing agreement. It's to set an appointment to meet with them in person, or maybe if they're not in the local area, to set up a Zoom and do a virtual listing appointment with them, or a buyer consultation with them. But the key is setting that appointment. If you say you'll follow up, actually follow up. A lot of times people they talk to a realtor, and realtor says, oh yeah, I'll answer that question for you. I'll send you an email, or I'll call you back with that answer. Make a note, be systematic about it, like I said, with your client relationship manager, and actually do follow up, because that's going to prove to them that you're professional and that you will uphold your word, and that you're going to be that same way when you're actually helping them buy or sell a home. Yes, people will hang up on you, and they'll be angry when you call, and they'll have some whatever emotion they're going through to share with you. But you just got to keep the emotions out of it. Don't get offended when somebody's like, why are you calling me? You need to have some more respect. And I was going to play it on here, but decided not to. I called the guy, and I was watching some YouTube videos about cold calling absentees. I forget the guy's name, but the technique he was using was, as soon as the person answers the phone, he's like, hey, are you the owner of 123 Main Street? And I'd already called like 10 people that day, and everyone else didn't have any issue. Like, oh, yes, I am, or no, I'm not. But this particular guy, he was like, excuse me, can you introduce yourself? And I was like, hey, this is Zora Morales, CXP Realty, local realtor here in Hawaii. How's your day going, sir? Next time you call, you need to introduce yourself first. You don't just barge in somebody's front door. And you need to I was like, all right. But lesson to learn from that is just keep the emotions out of it. He hung up on me, moved on to the next call. No, he's not going to remember that call a day from now. If I happen to, the 1 in a million chance that I bump into him on the street and he hears my voice and recognizes me, he's not going to remember that. Like that small scenario that you make up in your head, it's not going to happen. So keep the emotions out of it and just keep on trucking. And just keep in mind this quote from Albert Einstein: you never fail until you stop trying. So yeah, you might have a bad day where you're like, all right, I'm done calling for the day. This has just been too much. As long as you keep trying the next day and the next day after that, you never fail until you stop trying. All right, now getting into the fun part, the math. So thing to keep in mind is that it's a numbers game. So a book I highly recommend reading is Millionaire Real Estate Agent by Gary Keller. So in there, this book is basically like SOP, standard operating procedures for having a successful real estate business. And one of the things he talks about in there is knowing your numbers. So what that means is this right here, like tracking your data in addition to other numbers, but in terms of calling. All right, so if I dial 10 phone numbers, 3 of them answer, and have a conversation with one of them. And then, so you set a goal for each day. And Jeff Kiani talked about it in the last monthly meeting. Like if you want to have some good results as a brand new agent, you should be aiming for 100 dials. And it sounds like a lot, especially me talking to myself from a month ago, where it took me 2.5 hours to do 100 dials. That would have taken me 25 hours to make those 100 dials. But now I've gotten faster, and so it's taking me about 4 hours to do that. But yeah, so set a goal for each day, 100 dials. So I'm aiming to get 30 answers and then 10 conversations. And this is where that tracking your data comes into play. So when you're making those tick marks or keeping track on your spreadsheet, tally up, all right, I'm going to call 100 people today. I'm aiming for 30 people to answer. And so you can hold yourself accountable. If you get those 30 answers, maybe you call an additional 10 or 15 people to get to that 30 number. And same thing for conversations. So, and the reason you break it up like this, because a lot of people will not answer their phone. And you don't want to say, all right, I'm going to be successful if I dial 100 numbers, because you might just hear it ring twice and then you decide to hang up, and that doesn't fulfill the dials requirement. So yeah, you got to hold yourself accountable with that. But yeah, so 30 answers. And then from those 30 people that answer, maybe 10, 20 of them are wrong number, or they just hang up on you, or they tell you, no, I'm not interested. And then you actually have 10 conversations with 10 of those 30 people. All right, so going a little deeper, those 10 conversations. So these 10 conversations here, then dwindles down to 3 actual leads. So 3 people that are interested in buying or selling a home. And then of those 3 leads, you get 1 closing. So it might sound kind of discouraging, 1 closing from 100 dials, but that's just in 1 day. So just keep that in mind. It's a daily thing. So now it's a little time for a little deeper math. So if you set your goal, so my personal goal for this first year was 250K annual GCI, so gross consolidated income. And so you take your average price point for your area, multiply that by the average commission. So out here, it's about 2.5%. And then you find your average commission. Then you take that goal GCI, divide it by that average commission, and you get the number of commissions you need to get, or the number of closed deals. So for me out here, the average client that I'm working, so the average single family home in Hawaii is $1,050,000 for a single family home. And then condos are about 550,000. And so the average client that I've been working with has been about $750,000. And then so that multiplied by the 2.5% commission leads to an average commission of 18,750. And then you take that, the original goal, GCI, 250K for the year, divide that by the average commission. And that means I need to get 14 closed deals over the course of the year to meet that goal. So for this past 7 months, we'll be at 14 deals by the end of the month. But the reason I'm not at 250, a lot of those were split up with the team. We were working on the deal together because I was still learning stuff like that. But eventually we'll get to the point where 100% of that commission, or at least after capping with EXP, 100% will go towards my GCI, and then it'll be closer to 250. So those 14 closed deals, now doing some reverse math to figure out how many calls, how many dials you make. So 14 closed deals. So if you remember from the previous math, one closed deal came from 3 leads, and those 3 leads came from 10 conversations. So in order to work that out, I'll have to have 42 leads throughout the course of the year, which means I'll have to have 420 conversations. And those 420 conversations come from making 4,200 dials. So it might sound mind-blowing, but again, this is over the course of a year. So divide that 4,200 by the number of working days, and you figure out how many calls you need to make a day. And again, this is just 2 to 3 hours a day. This isn't your entire day. This is just 2 to 3 hours of making those phone calls, which will result to achieving that goal. And so the reason I point that out is because you're not only going to be having those closings, you're going to have your sphere of influence that's reaching out to you when you're posting on social media. People are going to see, like, oh, this person just got an offer accepted, or just closed a deal, and they're going to reach out to you because they see that. So this is almost like the minimum that you'd be making within that year. All right, so some words of encouragement. Your numbers will get better over time. So instead of that 10 to 1, eventually as you get better at talking on the phone, better at dialing, etc., better at actually getting that lead to closing, your numbers will get better. And so maybe eventually you'll get like a 10 to 5 or something instead of 10 to 1. It'll be a lot easier to reach your goals. And then you just set your goals higher and aim for those. Another reason it'll be easier is successful closings will lead to referrals, and successful closings will also lead to repeat business. So we've had 3 or 4 clients that we've worked with in the past 7 months that have sent us referrals that led to other closings. And so a book I strongly recommend that talks about that topic is Work by Referral by Brian Buffini. This book right here, you get it for like $10 on Amazon. And yeah, basically it talks about you'll eventually get to a point where you have so much repeat business and referral business coming from your friends, family, and previous clients that you won't have to be doing as much calling or as much marketing, paying for Facebook ads or Zillow leads, etc. And so that's the goal, but you got to start somewhere. And so that somewhere is with calling. Any questions? All right. And then just this last slide, helpful things that have helped me in shifting my mindset and persisting every day, not giving up, is listening to podcasts. So I've kind of shifted from listening to music while I work out and while I do mindless things like driving, and I've shifted towards listening to podcasts. It could be a book about real estate, or it could be a book about or a podcast about something else that's actually beneficial to your knowledge and it's going to make you better. And so when you're listening to whatever it is you're listening to, ask yourself, is this making me better right now? If it's some kind of crazy music that's just cussing and talking about alcohol and whatever, it's probably not benefiting you. And so maybe you need to listen to something else, but that's helped me out a lot. And then reading books, making reading part of your daily routine, as well as journaling, and then establishing and sticking to your routine. It's hard to, like, I've gotten in the habit of writing out my schedule and then the day before kind of filling in any gaps and all that. And it's hard to stick to it, but eventually, kind of like with cold calling, eventually it'll get easier and you'll hold yourself accountable towards doing what you write down, etc. But you got to have a rudder on your ship, because you could be a speedboat. You could have all the motivation in the world and be ready to go 100 miles an hour all day, every day. But if you don't have goals and you don't have a route laid out for how you're going to get to your goals, then you're just going to be going in circles.
Yeah, and I would add too that if it's taking you 3 months to make 100 phone calls, you can imagine why you would come back and say something like that wouldn't be working. And I've gotten from some of my agents on my team that said that they were calling numbers, and I was like, you've only been dialing for the past 3 weeks, like you still got to keep at it. So it could take you quite a while to actually see results. And if you're not seeing results, it means that you're either not dialing enough numbers per day, or you need to work on your script. Something in your script is broken. So if you're not seeing results, it's probably a result of one of those two things.
Yep.
So
yeah, it's a slow start, like the first week, I would say. But if you stick with it and keep doing it every day, it starts to ramp up. Any questions?
Yes, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, can you hear me clearly?
How's it going, Joel? I can hear you.
Okay. Hey, I'm doing well. How you doing? I had a question about the dialers. I know you said that you had limited experience, but Tasha, she had mentioned that the dialers dialing 3 numbers at once, knowing that we need to put the effort in and dial a lot throughout the week. Has there ever been the case to where, I don't know, how does the dialer work? Does it prioritize somebody if they pick up first versus the other 2 numbers that you might be dialing if you happen to be dialing 3 at a time? I have a second part after this.
I think I can help you, if that's okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Can you hear me, Joel?
Yes,
Hello?
I can hear you.
Oh, awesome. So when you're using a dialer, depending on how you set it up and which dialer you buy, you can call up to 4 numbers at a time. And what it does is prioritizes the people who pick up. So what you can do is, it's personal, at least for the Vortex one, you can personalize it to whatever you want it to do. So if you wanted to do four rings, or if you wanted to go all the way to voicemail, that's up to you. What it'll do is, once you get a pickup or a voicemail, it'll basically pause the rest of your dialing, allow you to complete that phone call or that voicemail. It'll ask you some questions to input the information on whether or not, you had a successful contact, whether it was another agent that you accidentally called. All those things, you can put in your information there. Think of it like what Zohar was saying about the CRM earlier. It's kind of its own little system in itself. So it actually lets you keep notes. And then anybody that you have from there, what you'll want to do once you have them at your appointment, you want to go ahead and put them in your CRM. Did that answer most of your questions?
Yes, it did for that part. The second part of it is that, I understand getting leads from calling. It's just out there for everybody to answer, for those who have experience. Things such as open houses, I can't think of anything else right now, but with the number one thing being the cold calls, what would be the second thing that you have noticed the most success to generating leads?
I would say just aside from cold calling, you said, the most, like I said, or missed it in the first part of the class, but my sphere of influence. So joining Facebook groups that have to do with, where you're from, where you're currently living, your high school, your favorite sports teams, whatever, joining those groups and being a resource of information, and then capitalizing when the opportunity comes up and someone's like, hey, does anyone dealt with buying a house. Like, even if it's in your Facebook group about like football or something, you can chime in. Hey, yeah, I'd love to talk to you about that. Here's my phone number. But yes, my sphere of influence has helped a lot. So the school I went to, we have a Facebook group for real estate investing, and so I was always chime in there. And they have like a database where they know where each state is, the state where each person is located. And so anytime someone's coming to Hawaii, they send them my way.
I would say too as well, Joel. It's, even though you're making these cold calls, right? I wouldn't even count this as your number one source of reaching out to people. Like, same thing with Zohar is saying, having that person-to-person interaction, that sphere of influence. One thing I think you'll learn, at least I've learned it doing these cold calls, is that what you want to do and the best results you'll ever get is getting those people face to face, right? Like, you'd be pretty good talking on the phone, but you're never going to be as good as you would be in person, making your full presentation, telling them what you're able to do, right? Because on the phone, you have a limited amount of time. They have a limited attention span, and they don't really know who you are. So, making those emails, reaching out to your contacts in KV Core, going to, different events and letting everybody know, like, hey, I'm in the real estate. That's really where you're going to pick up, good, solid leads. The cold calling is just another way to get yourself out there.
Okay, thank you both. Yeah, simple enough.
You got a question, Charles?
Yeah, for the going back to the dialer, so you can call like 3 or 4 people at once, right? So, and then it picks up or it chooses the person whoever picks up first, right? What happens to those other 2 or 3 callers? Does it just hang up? And then does it just hang up on them, or how does that work?
So the chances of somebody answering the phone, or 4 people answering the phone all exactly at the same time, is going to be extremely low. So whoever answers the phone first is going to be where that dollar stops, right? So the one I pay for does one at a time, and I can do about 50 calls in roughly 10 minutes or so. You're not going to get a lot of answers, right? So on the typical 50 people, I may get 3 answers and probably 2 voicemails is what's going to end up happening. That's for my area. Could be different for your area. But in that case, they'll just be put on pause, and when you resume, it should pick back up and call those numbers right back. Another thing I suggest, and stop me if I'm talking too much, Zohar, but another thing I suggest is turning your phone. What happens with the dialer is it connects to your phone, so it calls from your phone number, right? A lot of those people are going to give your phone a call back from a different number because they suspect spam and all those kinds of things. Turn that off, put it in do not disturb, because the last thing you want is to get a client from another address and you don't have any clue what they want, right? So send them to your voicemail, give them a call back later, because ideally you want to do these calls anywhere from once to twice a day. You want to call these people, like, I would say even up to 3 times a day if you're really trying to lean on cold calls as a way of generating clients.
Yep. Well, I was just wondering, because so say they're getting the call, right, but they don't pick up, and then you have another caller that actually picked up. So it hangs up on them, and then
Right.
do you ring them again? So then they're just getting many calls, or like?
No, so it'll continue down its list. So you'll have one person on your dialer potentially could have 4 or 5 phone numbers associated with their account. That's not to say that all of those phone numbers belong to them, but it's going to go down that list. So if you do hang up on somebody, it generally would go to the next person on that list, or the next number on that list, if that makes any sense. So if they have all 5 of those phone numbers, you will probably end up dialing all 5 of those phone numbers, and maybe they'll get 5 rings. But I can tell you the likelihood of you getting even 2 numbers that are correct for that person are going to be pretty low.
Okay.
Miko, you have a question?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I have a question real quick. This is for the calling Facebooks. So I understand that it's not recommended to research while calling, right? But at least you should know their address. Is that correct? Or yeah.
Yes. So what I was doing, I had a spreadsheet with 1,000 people, and I was doing one by one research for each one. But if you're, once you finally get them to answer, and kind of like what Ryan was talking about, if you're using a dialer, once you actually get them to answer, you can, all right, there's the address. And as I'm talking to them and asking them basic questions like, oh, how long have you lived there? I'm looking up their address and trying to find other things I could talk about as I'm talking to them. But ultimately, got to keep focused that you're just trying to set that appointment.
Yeah. Okay. Appreciate. That's it. Thank you.
All right, I'm just going to scroll down the list here on the chat box and answer some questions. So yes, this video and PowerPoint will be available after. Somebody asked you about the dialer. Tasha provided the link at the top of the chat box. And then feel free to raise your hand with any other questions. You have another question, Miko, or you just left your hand up? Optimal time to make calls, like Tasha said, as early as possible, but also, like in my case, if I'm calling people that are in the mainland, so not here in Hawaii, I might be calling them like in the afternoon, my time, or maybe in the afternoon to like late evening, even to catch them in the morning or something weird like that. What's your question, Joel?
All right, so specifically about the local area code, I understand that it can be written off as a business expense, given the way that our employee status. Question about using the dialers or the databases for the prospective leads. Would that fit in that area as well?
Yeah. So the dialer connects to your phone. It uses your phone number as the number that you're calling from. As far as KV Core, you'd have to purchase a number. It would likely be a local number. You can ask for that to change that around to make it a local number. So if you lived in, for example, 818 area code, you could ask for an 818 phone number for your KV Core. That way, it's $27 a month, but it's worth it because if they call the KV Core number back, they get eXp Realty as a brokerage, and they could disseminate your call to somebody else. So it's worth it just to make sure that those leads stay yours. With the RedX Vortex caller, because that's the only thing I have experience with. Again, your phone is the primary number that it's calling from.
Okay, and just to follow up on that, as an agent, are you writing the RedX off, that expense off, or how are you doing that?
It's my first year, man, but I have a tracker of my expenses. So I have a $530 charge for the RedX and the dollar for 3 months. I just paid it right out of pocket. I think they do have options for monthly, but I plan to write it off. I'm assuming as a business expense, you should be able to write it off, but I couldn't tell you for certain.
Yeah, you should be able to write it off. Like for me, I pay $223 a month. I just upped that to $287 a month by adding on GL leads. But I have the multi-line dialer, FSBOs, expireds, and GL leads, and I have emails and a whole bunch of other things. So like I have the full package. So it's just under $300 a month. But if you're going to use it, and that's going to be your primary focus, like you just got to get like one lead for that to even make sense for you. Maybe more than that. But depending on how much you're paying and which one you're starting out with, if that's too much for you as a new agent, you can always just get the geo leads and just make all those calls, $60 a month. If you want to go with emails and all this other fancy stuff, you can do this extra $60. However, I do recommend you at least have the one line dialer, because it's gonna take you forever to make those phone calls when you're just starting out. And if you are researching that data, like especially when you're calling expireds, that's going to be something that you will need to do. You will need to cross-check that, but you're going to need a dialer, so the way you're not spending hours trying to do that. I mean, Brian said he could dial 50 people in 10 minutes. That's phenomenal. So, if you could dial 50 people in 10 minutes, then that's going to be a lot better for you. For me, I don't use it as much. I give it more to my team members, and my team members are doing all of those calls. So.
Also to add on to that, just some things I'm thinking about just using the dialer is if anybody's on the DNC do not call registry, don't call them, right? So that's another reason to not use your cell phone, because sometimes you can miss things like that. On the dialer, they'll have the letters D and C right next to the number, and it will purposely skip over it as long as your profile is set up to do so. You can choose not to do that, but I would strongly suggest against it because I believe that's a fine. Also,
That
with
is a
that,
fine. Yeah, they will fine you. Yeah.
and then also with that, there's scripts on the dialer itself. So as you're calling people, it'll actually insert the person's name or their address in there. So that way, you can be like, hi, is this the owner of blah, blah, blah Main Street? Well, my name is Ryan. I'm not calling to sell you anything, but I just want to talk about why you think your home didn't sell, stuff like that. So you can have your own scripts or you can use the scripts on there. I found that memorizing the scripts from NAEA actually work a lot better, right? Because a lot of people get those. I would assume that a lot of Keller Williams agents use the Vortex system early in the morning, and they're pushing that. I can list your home kind of thing. Whereas if you come with a more helpful approach, like, hey, I'm not trying to say anything, I just kind of want to talk about it a little bit. I've gotten a little bit better response. That's just me personally.
Cool, thank you. Follow up. I'm not taking too much time for Zohar. Everybody as well. Is there a specific time? Like, I know likely after work, catching people coming home, but even within that small window, is there a particular time that you see is more successful than others?
I think you just got to ask yourself, like, at what point are you more likely to answer the phone? And it'll vary. Like, but for the most part, people will more than likely answer when they're not at work. So 4 p.m. ish after that time, but also first thing in the morning, like 8 a.m. before people go to work, might answer as well. But once you start dialing, you'll figure out when you're getting the most answers, especially if you track your data.
Cool, thanks. That's all I have. Thank you all.
All right, we're about 7 minutes past the hour, so thank you guys for coming. If you have any other questions, feel free to stick around. I'll stick around a little longer.
Yeah,
And,
Aaron had a tax question. So he said, for an establishment of a business, independent contractor from EXP, are you creating LLC in your state or simply owner operator or sole proprietor? David, did you want to answer that for him?
Business. All right, so on that one, for most people tend to find that from a tax accountant perspective, that once you hit 50,000 and up, that's when it makes sense to do LLC and do S Corp election. You can always start with an LLC from the beginning. LLCs in and of themselves are not tax entities. They are asset protection entities, right? So it's meant to limit your liability so that if someone comes after you, they can't go after all your assets. The S Corp election is a tax entity election to make it so that you get taxed differently. So if you do it in an LLC, basically all the income will flow to you just like it would if you're a sole proprietor. If you do LLC with an S Corp election, then basically you can take whatever income you make. Part of that could come back to you as a salary based on the salaries of similarly situated and experienced individuals in your area. So an adequate salary from IRS definition, which isn't defined, obviously. And then the rest would come back to you as a K-1 profit distribution, which then avoids the self-employment tax of 15.6%. And so that's the advantage of doing the S Corp election. Again, you can do that election out of an LLC. And so the LLC can do an S Corp election with the IRS. So you're technically then within an LLC for asset protection purposes and an S Corp for tax purposes, which is why a lot of companies do that. Hopefully that helps. Yeah. So with us, ours is an S Corp. All of our commission checks are paid out to our S Corp by EXP.
The question was, do you conduct all of your commission transactions in an LLC?
So what you have to do though is each state is different. Each state has separate laws as to how you can hold your license. You have to hold the license essentially within the LLC or the S Corp to get paid to it, right? And so each state is different. Florida, for example, to my understanding, requires the LLC to be your natural or your legal name. So for me, it'd be David Gwilt LLC. And
So
that's
you
the
guys
only
will
way I
wanna,
can hold the license in Florida.
You'll want to check with your local tax attorney. You know, obviously we're not CPAs, we're not tax attorneys. So.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, as far as LLC, you're gonna talk to someone that does tax entities. So you can start with a local CPA or accountant. If they don't help with the formation of LLCs, then you can talk to someone else. You can do them on LegalZoom and stuff, obviously, but that means you're also gonna have to do all your own independent research as far as how to hold your license within the LLC and all that stuff. So, from that side, you get what you pay for, obviously, and doing it on your own means that you're doing all your own research and advice as well. You're welcome.
I'll let you take over here from Zor.
All right, thanks everyone for coming. We're going to be making a couple of modifications in the coming weeks. We're going to shift towards doing these monthly meetings every Monday. And myself and Ryan Simmons will be switching back and forth and teaching these classes, just simple topics, and then answering any questions you might have as you're moving along through the internship. But yeah, looking forward to helping you guys out. As always, feel free to reach out if you want to schedule a Zoom meeting with me to talk about how I can provide some advice to you, depending on where you're at. But yeah, you guys have a wonderful Tuesday.
Thank you, Zor.
Thanks, Tasha. Thanks, David.
Thanks, everybody.
Hey, Tasha or Zoar, are you guys still on?
Yeah, I'm still here.
I have questions about the Avid.
Okay. Yeah, I
so
can stay on.
Monday, I guess I'm going to be doing my walkthrough with the inspectors, and I'm just curious if they find anything and voice it, do I need to put that on the Avid or not?
With the inspector, no. Your Avid is your visual inspection of the property.
Right. So it's just better just to go through, walk through and see all those things and then just have their reports be separate, correct?
Right. Yeah. Your report is always separate from the inspector because we're not professional inspectors, right? We're agents. So when we were doing our agent visual inspection, we are just putting what we observed. We are just putting like crack in the ceiling. We're not putting small crack in the ceiling. We're not putting crack in the ceiling because of settling. We're not doing any of that. We're legit just going through the home, notating what we see, and that's all we're doing. We're not climbing in things. We're not opening things to check in, we're not crawling in attics. We're not crawling underneath the foundation. We're not doing any of that. Ours is literally, like as it sounds, agent visual inspection disclosure. So, we're highlighting that there's a stain on the floor and there's wiring sticking out of the ceiling, like stuff like that.
Right. And then I guess follow-up question to that, it just came to my mind as you're talking about it. Once the inspection process is complete and the clients are ready to waive their contingencies, what would be the only other thing we'd be waiting on as far as closing?
So at this point, you're asking like, okay, we've waived all of our contingencies. What now?
Right. Well, do
Yeah.
we have to wait till the loan's underwritten for the loan contingency, right? So that should happen within that 17 days. But after that, is there
Right.
anything else?
Yeah, so after the contingencies are removed, it's kind of smooth sailing from then, because at this point, you're just monitoring and making sure with the lender and escrow that you're going to be closing on time. You're setting up the final walkthrough for the buyer to take one final look before you're closing, and that usually happens within the 5 days of closing. And you're going back and you're verifying that the repairs were made and everything still looks good. Obviously, if there's like a scratch on the door and there wasn't one before, that's no big deal. So we're not looking for that, right? We're looking for like major differences. In California, usually the owner isn't moved out yet. I don't know if this is an owner occupied property or not, but usually it's not. Okay. But at this point, even like stuff that should be removed may still be there. Final walkthrough is literally like setting your eyes on it, verifying repairs, and that's what you're doing for that.
Right. If all those things are fairly quick, the close of escrow date can move like back from where it is, correct or no?
It can, but then all parties will need to agree that the closing is being delayed.
Okay.
And I would never delay a closing because like, okay, well, we need to, put a patch over the drywall because, the movers accidentally hit a hole in it. Like that's something that should be resolved.
Right.
But
But
you shouldn't hold up escrow closing because of that.
can it go backwards in time though? So say if it's for the first
Oh
of the
yeah, like move in early, like close earlier. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
As long as everybody agrees and you're on the timeline to meet that. So,
Okay.
Does
They're
your
in a rush and they-
area do,
I'm
oh,
sorry.
I'm sorry. Does your area do same day recording?
I don't think so. I think we're on the 3 days, just like
They're on a 3-day process, just like LA? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so you'll want to make sure that that's all set up as well.
okay.
So, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. That was the only question I had.
Okay. I noticed somebody else had a question on GGU. A lot of the information I've seen on there seems to be more focused on already being licensed. Should I hold off on doing that work once I'm closer? No, just go through all of that. Yep, that's there for you to take it all in. Because what we don't want you to do, right, is go through the program and have no idea how to conduct your business. Because if you just get your license while you're in our program, that's not really going to benefit you that much. If you go through the trainings in Growth Group University, that's all set up to, where you're going to know how to talk to people, know how to do buyer seller presentations and all of that. So that's why we have that set up for you. Anyways, I think Zoar left because we're over our time. Does anybody have any final questions before we end the meeting? All right. Thanks, everybody. See you later.